Chewie. We're home.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined today by... Wait, is that Darth Vader? No. No. I would never bring a Lord of the Sith on the program. I'm joined, of course, by Andrew, and we're here today for yet another episode of My Star Wars Show. And today, we're talking all about Disney-era Star Wars, almost as a bit of a primer prior to the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. And just a little heads up there, like Book of Boba Fett, we'll do an episode for the first episode and then an episode about the season once it's wrapped. But that's enough future projection. We're about to get into the conversation. But again, before we do, got to stop us one more time because I got to do the plugs. If you want to talk to us about Star Wars, be sure to join our Discord. Link as usual, top of the description right down there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. I think that's it. Hug your mom. It's not going to be Mother's Day by the time you watch this, but it's Mother's Day today. So shout out to Leia Organa. How about?
There you
go. Andrew, all that's out of the way. We're here to talk about Disney era Star Wars and get, I would call it something of a pulse check as we kind of move into what almost feels like, in my opinion, the next phase of Disney Star Wars with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, this entire slate of new programs. We have like Andor and this new Tales from the Galaxy animated series and the Ahsoka show and everything. And then sort of percolations about new films like Rogue Squadron and games on the periphery, a billion games in development. It almost feels like we're taking a breather here.
8, 7?
It's
8.
a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. The point is, I feel like we're at a little bit of a lull here before things go nuts. So, Andrew, my question before we really get into the different pillars of Disney Star Wars, 40,000 feet. How do you feel about this era of the brand?
Well, first of all, just to pull a C-3PO, you might not recognize me because of the mask, but I got something even before, just in case you're wondering. I have a blemish. I got bit by something, so I don't want to. That's why I'm wearing the mask. It's not just randomly explain. I just had to put it out there real quick. So I think we talked about this before, where I said, like, when it comes to bad Star Wars or no Star Wars, I will always take bad Star Wars over
Sure.
Star Wars. I think for the most part, I'm pretty happy with the state of Star Wars in general right now. I think we're getting a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I just finished reading the 2015 Darth Vader run in the comics, which was I really enjoyed. And that, I don't think that would have existed if it wasn't for the Disney acquisition because that was 2015 and the acquisition was like 2-3 years earlier than that. So I don't know if we would have gotten that without the Disney acquisition, but I enjoyed what I saw, like Bad Batch. I haven't seen the last season of Clone Wars. I still haven't gotten to that. I definitely have not seen all of Rebels. I'm kind of just like, it's like a appetizer kind of thing where I'm just like picking and choosing here and there.
Sure.
And so I know there's a lot of detractors, a lot of people with like, this is in my Star Wars kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of people upset about that. I've been to Galaxy's Edge twice already, which I don't know for sure if that would exist probably not without the Disney acquisition.
No.
So I don't think so. But I mean, because they've already had Star Wars.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So they did already have that. Lucasfilm and Disney kind of had a somewhat like weak relationship. So, but that said, I'm really happy where things are right now. Like they're kind of expanding, not just like the old stuff, but we're getting some new stuff with Mandalorian, obviously, but with all these things that would not exist otherwise. And also, I haven't really got into it. I know you've kind of delved a little into the High Republic. I haven't really.
Yeah.
I think if I do, it's probably going to be in the comics before I get to the actual novels. But we're Star Wars fans. We're eating really well right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I just don't agree with the anti Disney era Star Wars hate in large part. I completely understand it, but I think that a lot of it is in part subjectively unjustified, but I think part is not really accurate. Like I think there's a lot of criticisms about small galaxy syndrome and with the context of things like Boba Fett and even Kenobi to an extent that I just don't necessarily think are true in the face of, an entire new era in the High Republic. I think part of the problem, Andrew, is that when people think of the Disney era of Star Wars, they go as far as the films, maybe a little bit of the games or the TV shows, but the sort of barometer is episode 7, 8, 9, Solo, Rogue One. That's Disney era Star Wars. But ultimately, I think that if you really engage in the brand, Disney era Star Wars is actually a whole hell of a lot more when you start to factor in the comics, when you factor in the games, the novels, everything that's going on here. It is, in my opinion, actually quite vibrant, and especially when you throw in animation too, which I think often is unfairly overlooked. Like people saying, "Oh, I can't wait to see Maul and Kenobi fight in the Kenobi show. That has to happen." But it did happen. It happened in Rebels. And I just think that people need to take a wider view to Star Wars. And when you do, there's a lot of really compelling content here in like a cross-media way that represents, in my opinion, a really multifaceted strength of the brand. So I'm feeling good about it, but with reservations that I want to talk about. So, Andrew, let's start with that top crust here. And let's talk about the films first, which is obviously Star Wars is primarily a film franchise. Now, I'm not necessarily interested in reviewing these 5 movies that Disney's released. I think that is something that we'll get to at some point on this program. But what do you think about the general output? What do you think high level about that trilogy? Are you happy with where they're moving forward with Rogue One or not Rogue One, Rogue Squadron? What's kind of your vibe on this pillar of Disney Star Wars?
I was kind of upset a little bit when I found out what the premise of the new trilogy was. I figured where we left Luke Skywalker at the end of the Return of the Jedi, we left like in a good place where, I mean, I like, okay, like Empire is defeated, you know, we're going to have a whole new slate of Jedi and everything. And then when you start like Force Awakens and it's like the First Order and it's like, what? Like it kind of made like everything that happened in the original trilogy feel kind of like it was all for nothing in a way, just because like the Emperor's gone, you know, the Empire supposedly is going to, you know, be done with. And here's like the New Republic and all that. But like 30 years later, or I forget how long it is in universe. I think it's like 30 years later.
I think so.
But like, it's like, nope, they're still, the Empire's still around. Like they're not the Empire. Now they have a different, they've rebranded. They got some PR work done or something. They're not the Empire anymore, but like that threat is still looming. And oh, by the way, like, here's a third take at another Death Star with Starkiller Base. And it's just kind of like, man, like, it really feels like Return of the Jedi just ended up like just being like forgotten. You know what I mean? It feels like swept to the side. That said, we talked about how that Finn fake out with him not being a Jedi, that was kind of upsetting. Let me just kind of like roll forward a little bit. I'm still really upset that Han and Luke never got to reunite. They never got to see each other, which was kind of like a bummer. So I really wanted like one moment with the original 3 heroes like just back together at least for like 5 minutes or something. That would have been great, but we never got that satisfaction. In general, I don't know. I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of people, and I think this is something that's come up with other like franchises where people all of a sudden after a few years have passed, the thing that was bad before, all of a sudden it doesn't look so bad in comparison, right? I think there's like we're in that era of prequel like recontextualization or kind of reappreciation in a way. It's like remember all those fancy fights in the prequel area? Oh, remember like the separatists and everything? And it's like, man, like we kind of have like rose-tinted glasses, like, oh man, like those were the days of Star Wars now. And I think all fandoms kind of have that thing where it's like, I think Tucker has mentioned it too with Pokemon, where now this is the generation that gets hate now, and then the one we hated before becomes beloved now. So I think it's kind of like a cyclical kind of thing. So go ahead.
People are on Twitter defending things like it happened a lot with No Way Home. People defending like Amazing Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 3.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I'm old enough to remember 2 weeks ago when you're like, these are the worst movies in the world, because they kind of are. But no, I think you're right. I think it is a cycle of fandom, and I think it's applicable everywhere. But first of all, I just don't think the prequels are as good as the sequels. On a pound for pound level, I think that there are better films in the sequel trilogy, but I also don't think that the whole like ceaseless desire to compare the trilogies really makes sense. Because what you can say about the prequels, if nothing else, I think there's a lot more to praise them on, but if nothing else, they are George Lucas's vision, right? That is a trilogy that's executed upon by a man who had a story to tell. Maybe somebody should have guided his story a little bit, or give it another look in the editing bay, but he had a story to tell. The problem with the Disney era Star Wars films is that they don't have a story to tell. They have J.J. Abrams' story to tell, and then they have Rian Johnson's story to tell, and then they have Colin Trevorrow's story to tell. But we didn't like Rian Johnson's story, so actually it's going to be J.J. Abrams' story again on the back end. And it ends up feeling really muddled. Or even things like Phil Lord and Chris Miller supposed to do a solo trilogy, which becomes one solo film directed by Ron Howard. It's just a lot of production side issues that I think hold back what are otherwise quite compelling narratives. Now, I don't need to beat this dead horse again, but I'm a big fan of 7, humongous fan of 8, not a fan of 9, really. But nonetheless, I think that I would have much rather had 3 films, and this might be a hard take, but I would have rather had 3 films of Rise of Skywalker's quality, where I feel its quality is, if it meant that it felt cohesive. Yeah. But there's no feeling of cohesion here. I think that is the single biggest problem with the Marvel era, or not the Marvel era, but Marvel certainly plays a role in kind of the formation of Star Wars now, but the Disney era. So
yeah, I forgot who it was. Somebody explained to me where like 7, 8, and 9 feel like a prolonged game of Uno, where it's just 2 people going back to back with like
sure,
red 3, and it's like, okay, yellow 3, and it's like, oh, reverse, and it's just like kind of like she's important. No, she's not important. Yeah, she's important again, and it's just like, it's like, how did you approach this when you guys did this trilogy and not think to storyboard all of this way in advance rather than leave it to the next person? Me. What was that? I'm sorry.
That's just what confuses me. I mean, this is Star Wars. You had so much time.
Yeah, it's like okay, you got like these caliber, like these great directors, and you have like you're trying to do the thing now where you actually have somebody who's in charge of the lore with Pablo Hidalgo. Like you have like all the resources, all the money, everything you can need to possibly make like a truly great trilogy, and it's just kind of like like, are we forgetting something? Like, nah, we'll remember it later. And it's like, oh yeah, we should have came up with an overall story to tell. And it's kind of just like, I don't know. It feels almost like an anthology series where it's just like, here's this person's take, here's that person's take.
Well, I think what they try to do, and it's funny that I had the Freudian slip of saying the Marvel era of Star Wars, is I think that that's what they were trying to do. What they were trying to do from the outside looking in is let's take the approach of adopting a house style. Let's bring in all these different creators to be working on these different projects. All be unified under a creative direction. But I think the problem is, and I don't have nearly the hatred for Kathleen Kennedy that other people seem to do, but there objectively is not the level of vision from her that there's from Kevin Feige, because he made it work where she couldn't. And she had his template to build off of, right? Mm-hmm. I think it was an issue of leadership. I think it was an issue of pre-planning. And it ended up not killing, but I think seriously injuring what are some really interesting chapters of the Skywalker saga. Like, I really love these characters. I love Rey. I love Finn. I love Poe. I'm a big fan of the Resistance. I agree with you. I think that the framing of, and then the First Order is here all of a sudden. The Resistance is really small again. Like, it feels a little bit arbitrary, but I think that they nailed really important elements of Star Wars. The characters, the designs of the aliens, these new planets. There's so much inspiration in this trilogy. I just think it could have been and should have been directed someplace a little bit more clear.
No, I agree with you. I think the sequel trilogy does have like some amazing stuff. I love those. I hope we see them again. Those like ice crystal fox thingies. Like, that's such a cool design for a creature. I love Rise of Skywalker. We see like when they're doing like the light speed skipping, we see all these cool looking like planets. Like, I want to know more about what is that place with the there's like these like pylons hanging in the middle of the sky, kind of like hanging down. And then we see that really dope shot of like that ice crystal looking planet where they refuel real quick and stuff. And I'm like, these are like really beautiful places. Like, I would like to see more of that like expanded, but I don't know, Abram. Like, I would have loved. I remember when the first shot came out of like, it was like a black and white photo where they have everybody in the same room, like going over, right, preparing for Force Awakens, like the first script reading, I think it was. And I remember seeing that in the magazine, just being so excited because you can make out where like Mark and Harrison were like next to each other. Yeah, and they all had the scripts with JJ, and like everybody was in the room, like wow, like it's gonna be like magical and exciting again. And it just, I don't know, it just feels like, I think it's very difficult to tread the line between like a rehash and then like paying an homage to something. And I think at some points, like Force Awakens just feels like playing it safe. Like, let's just do those things again, just change the names. You know what I mean? Starkiller Base, Jakku, we have our like not smuggler character, but our non-Jedi character in Poe.
Yeah.
We have another desert dwelling, what's my destiny kind of thing. And as much as I'm not the biggest fan of The Last Jedi for a couple of reasons, mostly just because of things that kind of get, again, I think it mostly comes to it not being like a seamless transition between the 7 and 8. But 8, I mean, at least maybe I don't agree with all the decisions, but it was interesting, which is what more than I could say for 7. And then 9 just feels like a victory like lap around the entire franchise, where it's like, let's retread and let's hit all of those things you love. Like, remember this, remember that, remember Lando, remember Wedge, remember, like, it's like just kind of like a victory, like a celebration of the franchise rather than an actual like proper story. So
yeah, I like Force Awakens quite a bit. I think Force Awakens is probably the best movie of the 3. Like, I think that one had a vision, it was executed upon, and it was a technically really fundamentally well-paced, well-executed film. But I agree with you. I think it probably got us off on the wrong foot. And this is certainly a hot take, but I think that Luke, Leia, and Han should have been nowhere near this trilogy, because I really think that their inclusion set the tenor for so many problems to come. First of all, I think that including them on like a meta level put us in the framework of these movies and maybe about nostalgia. And then either nostalgia is paid off poorly in the case of how many people feel about Luke, or things happen beyond their control. May Carrie Fisher, rest in peace, amazing woman, amazing actress, but can't be there for 9. Just all of those characters were mishandled, and they just cast a really heavy shadow over everything. And I think you could have written an more interesting version of these films that just wanted to move forward. But I think you can look at 7 and say, here is a boardroom constructed reinvention of the New Hope plotline to soft reboot Star Wars, which I don't think is a terrible idea, but that is very much a commercial decision for how to be in the saga. And then we have Rian Johnson come in, who just made a movie. Whether you like it or don't like it, he just came in here to make a movie, and he made a movie. Because I can't see so clearly like a Disney agenda in Star Wars. And I'm not talking about the garbage woke agenda in Star Wars, because it's not real. And I think that's such a horseshit line of complaint. But I think you can see a clear like agenda for what Force Awakens is trying to do. And I agree with you. I think you can see the same thing in Rise of Skywalker. It is let's just, the response to Last Jedi was so bad, let's just lean in the other direction and give people what they know. It was like a whiplash back and forth and back again. And I think that just didn't serve the just imagination of Star Wars. And which is why, even though I think that Last Jedi has serious pacing issues, serious plot issues, it comes the closest to evoking like the wonderment of Star Wars to me, which is a large reason why I like it above like the thematics and everything. But it was so uneven. But that's only 3 of the 5 movies we got, Andrew. What I'm curious for your thoughts on, because I feel like these are talked about less, but regarded perhaps better, being a Star Wars story films. The beginning of an anthology that really didn't pan out beyond these 2. But what do you think of Rogue One and Solo?
I adore Rogue One. I remember watching it opening night, and I think you know what it is that these 2 films, since they're not mainline numbered films, there's less, of course, expectations on them. But also there's no like we don't really have a preconceived notion of what has to happen, especially with Rogue One. We kind of already, I mean, we do have an idea, right? We know that the plans get handled. We don't know what happens to them, right? We know what happens to the second one. Well, the Bothans die. That's a different story altogether. But we don't know what happened to the first original, spies for the first Death Star. And
it was Kyle Katarn.
I forget. Yeah, that's true, right? They did. There was also, remember, there was a Star Wars game where you played as a Twi'lek, an orange Twi'lek, that also had to do with against Death Star plans. You remember?
Yeah,
that?
It was on DS and PSP, right?
It was on DS, PSP,
Lethal Alliance,
and I think
I never played Lethal Alliance.
Lethal Alliance, was that the one?
Yeah, but apparently it's like an Uncharted-esque like adventure game. I actually really want to play it.
But I know that the premise of that game was basically getting being the Death Star plans for the first Death Star. Right. So I guess it's easy to just write that out of canon because no one really played it or gave much attention, so it's not a big deal. But I remember hearing about Rogue One being a thing about like, oh, we're doing a movie about the plans for like the first Death Star, and I like Rogue One for it. Kind of just irons out a lot of issues with the original trilogy, with the whole how did they make like such a big mistake with the vent, the shaft and everything. And it's like, oh, that was designed on purpose. So it kind of goes back and like retroactively fixes a couple of things, which I like. Again, Abram, I'm a big fan of anything that has to do with the Force that's not directly Jedi. So we kind of have the Guardian, those two Guardians, right? Not the Guardians of the Wills, right? Is that what they're?
I don't remember, but Chirrut and
and they what's his name again? Begins with a B.
I'll look it up because I want to
like Baze. I want to say it's like Baze or something like that. Baze. But I like the idea again of a
yes, you're right.
Yeah, okay, of a Jedi adjacent take on the Force, where like we talked about this before too. You talked about this before, where it's like the I'm one with the Force is with me. Like that's just a really cool moment. And I like how we just have this like diverse cast of different people. These are just like ragtag kind of just we're coming together for a mission. It's kind of a suicide mission. It even feels like a traditional military film where it's just like so much action and there's high stakes and pretty much nobody dies. I mean, nobody survives. Everybody pretty much just dies, which I remember at the end, I was like, surely some of these are going to survive. And it's like, no, okay. They all die. And then we get that nostalgic scene where, before we even get to the Leia part, we have Vader in action, just like horror vibes in a way where he's just like the shallow breathing down the dark hall and it's the lightsaber, just cutting people in half, choking them, just throwing everything across, and this frantic need to just keep passing the plants to the next guy. It's like a long game of football. Just keep passing the plants forward, and just like, oh my god, it's a really fun film. I haven't seen it in at least a year, and then we get, of course, the payoff with like, what did it give us? It's like, hope. And it's just like, I remember like I was tearing up during the movies in the theater when I saw that. It was like, again, I guess you could say they went for the cheat points with like getting us in the heartstrings and stuff. But I'm a sucker for anything that makes me feel something. Like you won. That's a success for me. So
yeah, I like Rogue One. I like it. I feel like it does, for me, lack some of the imagination of Star Wars, which though I respect because it's very intentional. You say this
because it's more serious.
It's more serious. It's a more dour film. It's darker. It is just a different genre film. I think you're totally right. It is a war movie, like full out. It is Star Wars' war movie, and I think that's just a different appeal. And what's good about this film is that it really goes for it. And I think they picked the right director in Gareth Edwards, who did Godzilla 2014, which I don't really like that much, to be honest, but he has a sort of style and a feel, and he captured that very well here. It's a beautiful movie, shot by Greig Fraser, the Batman, Dune, real fucking amazing gentleman behind the camera. This movie looks beautiful. So for a Star Wars war movie, I think they executed really well. It just on one hand, I love that it does something different, like in terms of its genre, in terms of its tone. But on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, but we did that by telling the story that literally, like, you could cut the credits off of Rogue One, cut the crawl off of A New Hope, stick them together, and they're basically seamless. It's very cool in one respect, but another respect, I'm like, it would have been so interesting to see, why couldn't this have taken place between 6 and 7? And we could have had this director with this sense of style bring us a narrative of how we got from Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens. It's very subjective because I think it is a very well-made movie. I just think that we could have used those resources in a more inspired way.
All right, so two things real quick. The cinematographer you mentioned, that makes sense because I think Dune and Rogue One definitely have those like big scale feelings, especially when the AT-ATs come out. and then it's like you just hear the lurching, like what's that in the distance, right? It's like very like suspenseful, like, and then you just see like the ATTs just come out of the treetops, and it's just like, oh, like it's a panic, right? And then we have I think we get the overshot of like the spaceport early on. I forget what planet it is, but it's the one with the Jedi temple where you have like the statues falling over. So
Yeah.
that makes complete sense because there's a lot of those like big outdoor shots. So that makes sense. Second thing, I think they probably did not want to do between 6 and 7 because I think they want to explore that area more through other means of like media and stuff. And they probably don't have, I know like the comics, there's like a Poe comic that kind of goes into a little bit, delves between 6 and 7.
There's a lot of books that do that also.
Yeah. So I think they probably just wanted that fertile ground to play with. And like if they did a movie in between both of those, they would have to commit to a specific type of like, these are the characters who are around during this kind of period kind of thing. That's my only logical reason I can think of.
I think that makes sense. And I think maybe that criticism maybe applies more directly to Solo, which I think in part feels like do we really need a Han Solo story type of movie?
Not really.
But here's the thing, Andrew. I think Solo is a lot of fun. I think it's a really fun movie. Now, I think the movie looks terrible.
It's very orange and brown.
It's very orange and very brown, but also the faces are not lit properly. Like this movie to me, I'm of two complete separate minds of it. I think it is the worst looking Star Wars movie by a mile.
Okay.
But I also think that it is one of the most fun and heart-filled Star Wars movies we've ever gotten. I love the idea of a Star Wars heist movie. Yes. I love having Woody Harrelson here. The how did you get your last name? Completely bogus. I mean, I cannot believe I got past the number of screenwriters and editors that had to get past to get to film. I think that scene is bogus. But I do, if I can say, okay, fine, we're going to do the Han story. I like seeing this younger, gruffer, less experienced Han, or less gruff, actually, because he's kind of starry-eyed in this, which I like. I think Alden Ehrenreich is a very good Han. I'm a fan of his. And I think the movie just has a great vibe to it. I just wish it looked different. But I think it's so fun. It feels
more like a Star-Lord kind of Han Solo in a way.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But I think the movie's a ton of fun.
I do like Solo. I mean, I don't like it for Solo himself. I just really like Childish Gambino as Lando.
Oh yeah,
he's just so Donald Glover. He's just so like everything you've heard about me is true. Like he's just oozes like this charismatic just vibe where it's like, man, I really want a Lando film now. Like, please don't put resources towards that, but. Yeah, a mini series, maybe. I don't know. I want to see more young Lando. I want to see more Donald Glover in this role. Like, I don't know if there's any. I don't think we have any other series that are between 3 and 4 right now that are live action. At least they could go through there, but
I mean, we could see him in Kenobi. I doubt it, but
no, because I feel like that he would still his character would probably be a little too young at that point. Maybe because look, if Luke because if Luke is a kid, you have to true. Then. I mean, they're not this. I don't know how old they are, but he would have to be like within 5 years of that age range. Anyways, the point is, Donald Glover's. Lando. I'm sorry, I'm all fragile. Lando is just so much fun. I really like that. I don't remember the name of the droid, but it's like that very strong, like civil rights feeling droid. Yeah. I forgot her name. The one that ends up being kind of. Integrated into the Millennium Falcon, which is kind of funny because like people have always kind of said like Millennium Falcon is like very like has almost like a personality where it's very kind of stubborn, and I like how there's like kind of a backstory. There's some kind of like recontextualization around that, so I like that a lot. But yeah, I think and how it fixes the ship that made the Kessel run into us in 12 parsecs, and people are like parsecs is space, not time. It's like, well, we fixed that now. Now it's like we took a shortcut, and it's like, oh wow, okay, we fixed it. So, and then I just enjoy the whole how he meets like Chewie, and then we have like that early heist with Thandie Newton's character. I forget her name, but she dies early on. Yeah, and so we kind of get that little heist thing with like that kind of like not on rails, but it's like some kind of magnetic train car ride thing. And then we have I hope we see more of her, but Enfys
Ness. Yeah.
There you go. I love that whole helmet design, the whole shape. And then when like she takes it off and like, oh, it's just like a ginger-haired girl. And it's like, okay, like what's going on with this? And so I hope they kind of do more stuff with that. But yeah, you're saying like how the movie is very orange, very brown, and I think for like the first 30 minutes or so, the movie's just very gray. Also, it's very gray
Very
when they're in that
blue.
very blue, very gray when they're in that when he's with Kira in like in that dark lit room with that like worm woman thing.
Yeah.
And then when they escape, and then when he's in the mud on the with the Imperial forces, when he's like just a grunt, and like it's just very gray and it's just very drab. And you're right, it's just not very fun to look at. But I think it's the character interactions between all these people is what actually makes it a very fun movie. And also because I guess it has nothing to do with Sith or Jedi. It's kind of just like a fun like heist romp kind of movie.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So that's basically the film pillar. There really is not a whole lot to speculate about moving forward. I mean, Rogue Squadron is maybe still on the docket. We basically know nothing about that movie beyond Patty Jenkins directing it, and it's not even. I don't even think we know for sure that's going to come out.
I believe there was like an update because I looked this up recently for something I was writing about like 2 months ago. Like Patty Jenkins was like, she like for something she got interviewed for something, and she's like, oh yeah, we're still working on it, but no concrete details. Kind of like the whole Oscar Isaac Metal Gear Solid kind of thing. Like, we're looking for it. We're looking for the story. It's there, but that's it.
We'll see about that.
Yeah.
TV shows. Now, TV is a little bit weird because Rebels when does Rebels? Boy, I should have looked this up, but I think Rebels starts post Disney era, right?
Rebels? I remember that was 2012, maybe. I think that was too early to be considered the Disney era.
First episode date, October 3rd, 2014. So that would have been solidly Disney era.
Okay, never mind.
So I like Rebels a lot. I think Rebels is fantastic. But I think Rebels, I mean, Rebels is still so early. Like it is Force Unleashed, Force Awakens. So
it's post Force Unleashed.
It is post Force Unleashed. But if we can count that in the Disney column, then I think that's a solid win for Disney. I think actually animation has probably been the strongest suit of this selection. Now I haven't seen Bad Batch. I'm hoping to watch that this year. When that was on coming out concurrently, I was watching Rebels at the time, so I got my schedule all thrown off. But that's supposed to be quite good. The 7th season of Clone Wars has one really boring arc, but then some of the best content that show has ever seen. Period. So I think that's all great. Visions, we did a whole episode on. Visions, quite good. It's really one of.
We're getting a second one.
Yeah, it's not confirmed.
Oh, you know
yet,
what? I got confused with What If. I'm sorry. But we are supposedly get it announced, the second one.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Mm-hmm.
So animation, I think across the board, pretty much categorically great. And so we get into the live action stuff that I think problems arise a little bit because Mandalorian, obviously, I think probably the most lauded piece of Star Wars content, maybe since the original trilogy, honestly, universally beloved. But then you got Book of Boba Fett, which we also talked about, which is not Mandalorian. So that to me feels like the one blemish on what is otherwise a pretty phenomenal run of television in live action and animation.
Yeah, I mean, I you're right. It'd be hard for us to find someone who's into Star Wars who does not like the Mandalorian in some way or form.
Yeah,
because it's one of those kind of samurai cowboy kind of lone Ronin, lone wanderer. Here's going to the town like this episode of the week. We're going into a town, solving a problem, they're moving on. And you're still invested with the whole like. I feel like you can't really go wrong with like the tough, a tough, gritty adult with a child to kind of watch over. I mean, it works for God of War, it works for The Last of Us.
Yeah,
it works in so many different ways where there is something about that dynamic where you just want them to succeed and just still stay together at the end. And I feel like with Mandalorian, like they capture that whole charm and just that story trope in a way where it's like an escort mission, but it's a fun escort mission kind of thing, which is like not something you really get in video games, but when it's in television or like a movie format, like it's fun to kind of just have like, because I mean without that I think that's kind of what Boba Fett has that doesn't work well for it is that I mean what's her name, I can't remember her name, Fennec Shand.
Fennec Shand, yeah.
Yeah, like Fennec, like we don't really see. I mean, she does a lot, but she's not really someone who has like, hey, like let me talk to you about like my backstory or anything, right? She just kind of she does things, and I think she has like the opposite of problem where Boba Fett doesn't do that many things, but he does a lot of talking. And so I just feel I think Boba Fett. I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues with Boba Fett of maybe Boba Fett should have been Mandalorian and vice versa and all that. But I do think that is a misstep, and I think that that's just. I mean, you're not going to hit 100% home runs out of the park all the time. But I do think overall, if we continue, because we have like an Andor series coming out eventually, right? We have the
Ahsoka's the big one.
Ahsoka one. We have the Disciple one, which is supposed to be like kind of like I think pre-episode 1, right? It's had to do with some like Sith kind of stuff. I think it's pre-episode 1, but not by much. Like there's still plenty of opportunities where they can still kind of regain their footing with the live action stuff. And I don't know about Andor. I'm sure Ahsoka, I don't know how far that is. I don't know if they're even done with. Probably not done with filming. I know they have at least started. I don't know where they're at with that. But I feel like if they can learn the lesson from Boba Fett, or like maybe we shouldn't have like 2 episodes that have nothing to do with the main character. We can kind of ring that in a bit, tell a more compartmentalized story, and like if you don't do the nostalgia factor too much small galaxy syndrome, right? Because Mandalorian. We don't really get that until what?
Back half of season 2 is where it falls into that trap.
I mean, we didn't even get IG-88. That was just a generic IG droid. I'm trying to think like the first season. There wasn't really. I mean, we got one to Bo-Katan in her Mando show. Was that season 1 or season 2?
I think that's season 2.
Okay, so yeah, so like you can tell a good story without having to rely so much on your back catalog of characters. And I know Ahsoka, obviously coming from Clone Wars and Rebels, like she has a history already. Yeah, we know that Sabine's going to be with her. Like she's already been cast and all that stuff. So like, if they can just tell us a good story, even with the characters they have, and not rely too much on like, remember when we did that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think it can work pretty well. So I haven't seen I've seen all Clone Wars except for the last season. I have not seen a lot of Rebels. I've seen like a few episodes here and there. I told you like I just saw the Darth Vader one.
Yeah.
And then another one involving like this weird Lothal cat or something. I don't remember. And that's about it. Yeah, Lothcats. There you go.
There's some good Lando episodes too, actually, if you want some more young Lando stuff.
Okay. I know there's a Leia one too. There's a Leia one.
Yeah, Leia shows up.
And I've seen about half of Bad Batch. I think I got to like episode 8 or 9, and I just got busy with other stuff. So you're right. I think of what I've seen from the animation side, you are correct where there's more hits. I also think that kind of helps that all the animation episodes, like there's way more episodes per show.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you probably just have more hits than misses, because by sheer volume, maybe.
Yeah. And I think, also they're just so unrestrained by the idea of trying to tell this huge, part sci-fi, part fantasy, part Western like story and universe and live action, even with the crazy like tech that goes into the Mandalorian to render those environments and everything. Like that's so much easier to do when it's all animated in the computer, which I think certainly helps, and it allows Rebels and Clone Wars to go wherever the hell they please. And to me, that's when Star Wars gets so exciting. I mean, I really genuinely think Rebels is just some of the best Star Wars period. It does a really wonderful job of balancing the fan service with the just great new original characters. I think Mando does the same thing. Again, I think the cameos become overbearing in the second half of season 2 of Mando. They kind of end up monopolizing the show a little bit, especially when Luke Skywalker, yes, and definitely Boba Fett, but when Luke Skywalker comes in to save the day in Mando, it ends up ringing a little bit hollow to me. But on the whole, I think that TV, and I said this in the Hot Takes episode, but I really think TV is the future of Star Wars. Have these nice big films we can look to, these marquee releases, but Kenobi doesn't look like it's of a lower production value than the sequels.
That look, I like both trailers we've seen. I think the second trailer is just a rehash of like stuff from the first one with a few extra stuff. But like when we see, I don't know, the Inquisitor, the black female with the Inquisitor, like she looks fearsome, she looks cool, she looks intimidating. We see like the shots of like, what is that? Like some kind of like, it looks like kind of like a steamy Hong Kong, New York kind of planet. It's not Coruscant. It's like something else. I forgot the name. They give it a name. I can't remember the name right now.
I don't either.
Of course, we're getting more Tatooine, everybody's favorite planet. But like everything, like production wise, like you're saying, like everything looks like top notch. Something we would have not been able to pull off like 10 years ago, I think.
No.
So like, look, I'm very excited. I'm basically, it just comes to the point right now. It's just like you have the budget, you have everything. It's just all you have to do is just give us a good story, and like nothing else will really matter at this point, because they have everything else that they need to nail that Star Wars feeling, from like the music, obviously the musical cues. I think the only part that looked kind of cheap to me, and it was just for a one moment, was when we get that overhead shot of the stormtroopers walking down the street.
Sure.
And with the, I don't know, the guy with the weird mushroom headed hat. I don't know his name. I know he's like one of like the Inquisitors.
He's another one of the Inquisitors. Yeah, one of the brothers.
He's walking down the street with the stormtroopers behind him, and just something about, I don't know if it's the angle or something. It's just something right there kind of looked like low budget. But that was about it. Everything else looked like okay, this looks like really, really good.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things Disney has provided to Star Wars is Disney Plus. Like the resources, the space to tell these stories, to revisit these shows like Clone Wars, to bring cinematic production and resources to Kenobi, to Mandalorian. That's really unmatched on the streaming services for the most part. There are obviously exceptions. HBO dumping a shit ton of money into Game of Thrones, for instance, right? But I think about the Halo show, which is a punching bag right now. But even just on a technical level, that doesn't compare to what they're doing in Kenobi, I don't think. Like Disney's resources provide a level of quality there, especially when you have actual episodic storytelling opposed to the Marvel route of let's just make a movie and cut it up into chapters. Essentially, for some of those shows, this feels like, let's take Dave Filoni, who knows television. Let's take our Disney Plus resources, which are great, and let's give the fans things like Mandalorian season 1, like Kenobi, and that is just a great match. So I'm very excited for the future of Star Wars and Disney Plus in particular. But video games.
My favorite.
Here's where things get wild, Andrew.
Okay.
Because Star Wars video games are in, I would say, the greatest state of flux of any pillar of Star Wars right now.
Okay, because when you say flux, what do you? Okay, I'm curious.
What I mean is that there's so many unknowns. There is so much constant change. There's, in my opinion, very little way to get an accurate pulse on Star Wars video games, because
there's like too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing.
We went from having one cook in the kitchen who was cooking poorly to 9 billion cooks in the kitchen all doing different things. Because we have to remember that the Disney era shepherded in the boneheaded, terribly conceptualized 10-year exclusivity deal with EA, which gave us a smattering of games. Battlefront 2015, which I like, but it's certainly not what that series needed to come back with. We got Battlefront 2017, which began in an awful place, but I think in the end is actually quite a lovely game. I like it quite a bit. We got Fallen Order, which is the categorical rise above the other success, I think. And then Squadrons, which found less success, but was still enjoyed.
That game is fun. Okay.
Yeah.
That game is fun, especially in VR. Okay. In VR, you try.
I did. Oh, it just made me so dizzy. I wish it didn't make me so dizzy, because I did try on PSVR when I went home. Like,
you got to build your VR legs.
I got to build the VR legs, because I'm working on it. Like, I played Vader Immortal, which is awesome. Same era. Like, this is kind of thing I want to talk about. Like, Vader Immortal is fucking fantastic. Not, that's part of the Disney era, but not out of this EA deal, right? So but even though the EA games I think are better than people give them credit for, Ragtag's canceled, the Visceral game is canceled, like shit just keeps getting canceled, terrible stink on the whole thing, and then all of a sudden the deal's pulled away, and now we have so many games. Quite a dream game. 3 games within Respawn. KOTOR remake. There's more than that, right?
The Amy Hennig one, the new one got announced.
The Amy Hennig game, which is rumored to just be Ragtag coming back.
Yes, thank God. Hopefully.
But then at the same time, we've got Aspyr porting and like remastering the Jedi Knight games. Force Unleashed. KOTOR is on Switch and everything. At the same time, the mobile games are booming. As I'm saying, Vader Immortal is happening. Like, this is just a swirling vortex of poor PR, middling games, and some real stand-up successes, and then just this like vast vista of the games that I think are in real jeopardy of being canceled, frankly. Like, I think Quantic Dreams game has a serious shot of never coming out, for instance. So I just think that video games are in a really tumultuous position. Oh, and Lego Star Wars, of course. So,
and then what's that arena shooter Hunters also?
Oh yes, which I you know what, I wouldn't be surprised if there's like closed beta of that happening right now, to be honest with you. But
I think there was, but I forgot for what system, or if it was like for mobile. I forgot.
Probably just mobile.
Yeah, I think it was for mobile. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we kind of went. I mean, when I think of Star Wars games, I think of course the classics, Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Battlefront 2, the pandemic, the old one.
Best era.
Yes, I think of like, man, like they weren't as common, but what we got, we lost in quantity, we had to gain in quality. I remember, I don't know if you ever played the Obi-Wan game. It was an Xbox exclusive.
I never have been able to, but it looks so cool.
That was back then when that came out back in 2000 or 2001. I forgot what there. It was like one of the first games my cousin had for Xbox when I was like 10 or 11. I remember like that game was so much fun. It was basically a retelling of episode 1 with a little bit before that about Obi-Wan going through his like training and stuff. So it was really dope. But yeah, once the EA exclusivity deal happened and it was like, oh shoot, like we're locked in. And I was like, okay, well, EA owns BioWare, so maybe we'll get a Knights of the Republic 3. And then, well, that never happened.
I mean, we did, but it's an MMO.
Right. That was announced like in 2009 though. So that was even before the exclusivity deal.
Right. That was pre-Disney that it comes out.
Yeah, because I remember it was like 2009 or so. It was at E3 where we got that dope ass trailer and everything. So it's like you've had this property, but you don't use it properly. And so I mean, I think like 2 years ago is when people were starting to wonder, like, hey, like that exclusivity deal is going to end pretty soon, right? Like they're not going to renew it, right? And like no one had an idea of what was going to happen. And then we started getting like trickling little bits, right? We got Ubisoft working on some Star Wars.
That's the other one I forgot. Yes.
And we're like, okay, it's the team that does Ghost. I think it was a Ghost. I forgot what team it was.
They do the Division.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I knew it was a military shooter. Okay, I was close. Okay, they do the Division, right? It's like, okay, like a Star Wars skin on that. Like, what could that be? And then it was like, oh, and then who has exclusive deal? Who's working on the Indiana Jones game? Because there's the Indiana Jones game.
Machine Games, great studio. They do they do the new Wolfenstein games, which are fucking awesome games.
I never touched those, so I wouldn't know. Not because I don't want to. I just haven't. But okay, so like I think that was what 2000. That was the tail end of 2020, maybe the start of 2021 last year, where we started hearing about these things.
Yes,
and we're like, okay, so this means like they're losing the exclusivity. They're basically like they didn't say it, but it was implied. Like, oh, they can't do this unless the contract's expiring, which it does next year, right, 2023. And so we're like, okay, thank God, because we've had like you said, Ragtag. They've even mentioned there's been like 2 other Star Wars games that they scrapped. And like that, not including 1313, which was like even before that. That was before EA's exclusivity deal. So like all just for a while, the Star Wars video game license was just seen with kind of just like pity in a way, where it's like, man, like what could have been? What could
missed
have
opportunity?
Been, right? Yes. And now it's like, oh, like it's again that whole whiplash. We're going the opposite direction where it's like, bam, bam, take this. Right? You got Ubisoft, we got Aspire, we got freaking you just mentioned there with the 3D respawn, right? Respawn Entertainment. So it's like see what sticks to the wall kind of thing going on right now with Quantic Dream and everything. And like, yeah, Quantic Dream because of the whole they don't have enough people to make the game, plus the whole negativity surrounding that studio in general. Like, that's probably not going to plan out so well. But now we're like in a state where it's like, oh, thank God, like things we're kind of, we're like past the dark clouds. We're seeing the silver lining. We're over the horizon. We can see the sunlight. Like, it's like, now we just got to stay the course and hope that these are quality games that come out. And I mean, the only one I actually have like the highest, like, what was that? What's the right term? The most hope of being like great is the KOTOR remake. Like that's the only one that I really like. That's where my hopes and my dreams are like residing on that specific one. And it's like, hey, we're probably going to change the combat. I'm just like, oh, okay. That's not bad. Because it's the story that I care about more than anything. Yeah. It's the options, the interactions, the characters. Like, okay, like, like hopefully you do like a Final Fantasy VII remake path where it's, right. It's actually good, like modernization. So, but I think I'm very hopeful for Star Wars video games. I used to be really fond of the Battlefront games, but not since like the PS2 era ones. I haven't really been into them that much. So, and I hope we get more Squadrons. I know they didn't sell that well, but I love Squadrons. I want more Squadrons or DLC or something. So I want more of my flight sim VR Starfighter stuff. So that's where I'm at.
I wish I shared your same optimism at the KOTOR remake. I just like Aspire does amazing work preserving the legacy of Star Wars. Republic Commando, the Knights of the Republic games. I mean, they have worked with both KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2, porting it to console, porting it to to Steam, porting it to mobile, but they've never worked on a project this scale. Like they're doing a PlayStation 5 an exclusive remake of KOTOR, changing so much shit about it. Like, I don't know. I really hope it's amazing, but I feel like I have to pump the brakes on that one a little bit. But I think the one I'm actually both the most excited for and I have the highest hope in is Respawn's. They said they're making a Star Wars first-person shooter. Because when they put out a blog post, they're like, hey, 3 Star Wars games in development. Third-person action game, which is Fallen Order 2. A strategy game, and then the shooter. Respawn makes great shooters. So if I get an excellent narratively driven, even if it has multiplayer component, I don't care.
Titanfall Star Wars game.
Yeah, like if oh my god,
climb into the AT-ST kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a reason to be optimistic. I think there's more reason to be cautiously optimistic because these projects so tantalizing, but I just hope they pan out.
The strategy one they're not doing on their own, right? I think they're partner with somebody else for that one.
Probably. Maybe Firaxis or somebody.
I forgot. I remember they mentioned that they were just producing it. They weren't developing it, I think. So yeah. But
a lot going on there for sure. Now, I want to talk about comics and books for a moment. Because initially I was thinking maybe it's not that big of a deal, but I got to practice what I preach here and I got to celebrate this facet of Star Wars because I think it's honestly one of the most interesting right now. And the centerpiece in my mind, we can talk about the new canon. We can talk about all of that.
Go ahead.
We can talk about the new canon. We can talk about all of that. But I think the High Republic to me really is the fixture of this new initiative here in books and comics. Obviously, I mean they're inventing a new era of Star Wars.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I think that's so cool. Now I have tried to read the books. I cannot get into that first book no matter how many times I try. But the comics, I think, are really excellent. There's several different High Republic series going on, and I've read at a certain point, I was completely caught up. Now I've fallen back a little bit, but I think I can catch up on Marvel Unlimited now. But I really think some of the most interesting Star Wars storytelling right now is happening in those comics. Did you get the app
working, Abram? Did you get the app working? Okay, that's a no.
Marvel Unlimited is so fucking terrible in browser. You literally can't see your library of books. You can barely search for anything. Now, when I go back home in a couple of weeks, I'm going to get I've got a fucking Samsung tablet from early in high school.
Okay.
But that is still fine. It's still fine enough as an e-reader. So I'm going to throw the app on there and actually be able to use Marvel Unlimited better. But I don't understand why it's so fucking hard to read comics on a laptop. Comicsology was so good, and then they completely ruined it with the newest update. But this is a conversation.
It is annoying because, like, I find it funny because I remember in the Discord server you were like, "I'm not going to read comics on my phone," and like myself, and somebody else were like, "Well, that's how we do it. We read it on our phone because that's like, yeah. I mean, with a computer, I can do it on a computer. Like how I figured out how to make it work. You have to do you have to clear your cache. You got to do there's a workaround to it. It's a pain in the ass, but you can do it on your computer, and it's just like. I don't know. For me, it's just not the same. Like on my phone, it's easier because I can just like hold and like zip around the panel with the touch rather than it's not the same as holding an actual book.
Right.
But like clicking with my mouse, like it's just not as fun anyways. But like, so yeah, like the app is really wonky, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I could just like zoom in on the parts I want to read and then just kind of like slide and it resets and just zoom in again. And I don't know, but yeah, I haven't read. So what is okay? Because I haven't read any of the High Republic stuff. I've read mostly Dr. Aphra, which is like which is fun. Dr. Aphra is pretty dope. I really love her character. She's such a cool character. She's kind of like not an evil. She's like a morally ambiguous Indiana Jones. Is the best way to explain it. And then I've read the 2015 Darth Vader run, which is really dope, just because
like you think after A New Hope that Darth Vader is just like there's no more Anakin in him.
Sure.
But there's a lot of moments where, like, without going to spoilers, where like you get flashbacks from like the prequel movies from his point of view, and it's like, oh, like he still cares about like this certain character, or he still feels remorse about this kind of thing. And it's just like, because we don't get that in any other way. We don't get that in the movies. We don't get that in the book. I mean, yeah, we don't get that in like games or anything.
No.
So I think the comic format is really dope because you can revisit like Dr. Aphra. No one's going to care about that character in a video game or really like in a movie, right? But like in comics, you have like I mean, I don't know exactly production value, but I think it's probably the cheapest media format to make a story for, right?
I'd imagine so.
It's just drawing. It's not like actual animation, like CGI stuff, right? Like it's the cheapest barrier to entry for Star Wars storytelling. And I think that's why there's so much. You can't rely on visuals. I mean, you kind of do, not to the same extent as like a movie or a video game. So you have to like really tell compelling character story driven pieces. And I think on the comic front, I haven't read High Republic stuff, but like Disney era Star Wars of like Galactic Empire, that kind of stuff, like it's pretty, there's more hits than misses, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really great hotbed of experimentation. I think it's for the reason you're saying, and that extends, I think, really nicely into the new canon books also, which when you get over the sting of dropping the floor out on, what do we call it? Right, the legends, as they call it now. Jettisoning all of that shit was obviously, I think it was probably a necessary maneuver for Disney, but nonetheless a very negative one in the eyes of fans. But once you get over that, I think there are a lot of really great stories to tell. Speaking of Vader, Lords of the Sith is a really fun story. I like that a lot. There's a great Ahsoka book too. There's a lot of really interesting stuff happening, and material that bridges that gap between 6 and 7, like the Aftermath trilogy. I've only read the first book so far, but Aftermath is quite good. There's others like Star Wars Bloodline and things. There's a lot of great material happening here. Same with the comics. High Republic, I would really implore people to check out. I know that there's some trepidation around it for X reason or Y reason, but it really is worth reading. And I hope that some of the ideas that are bred here in these literary formats move into these other mediums, because I actually think Dr. Aphra might be able to work. I mean, Black Chrysanthemum was arguably one of the highlights of Book of Boba Fett. Mm-hmm. Who comes from, I think it's first the Darth Vader series, I think is where he's first introduced.
That's where he shows up,
But it is just a really great place to go. If you say the Star Wars galaxy is too small, or if you say that these storylines aren't inventive enough, you got to be reading the comics, or at least give them a shot. Pick up a novel. There really is a lot of great stuff happening here.
The Darth Vader stuff is really dope because besides Dr. Aphra, we also get, there's like a sadistic version of C-3PO called 000. I don't know if you countered him. It's like, because I know some people, like I know people who find C-3PO to be very like grating and kind of annoying, but it's like if you just apply that to a creature that's more sinister and just lives to torture, like it's actually very endearing and very funny. It's very fun. Yeah. And then like there's also a counterpart to R2D2, I think TB1, I think his name is, and he just has freaking missiles and saws and blades and lasers that pop out, and it's just like, oh, like there's so many like weird wacky stuff in the comics that's just like this shouldn't work, but it does.
Yes, the comics are so much fun. Mm-hmm. Definitely check them out. Get a sub to Marvel Unlimited, or just go into your bookstore. I mean, like, I don't have a good example.
Free comic book day was just yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I have actually in my bag right now, which I'm reading, which is quite good. Star Wars Thrawn. I mean, these are like $8 or $10 books. It's a really obviously low price point, entry point into these different Star Wars stories. Mm-hmm. It really is worth exploring.
Or like you said, like even like a comic, like any digital comic subscription, like I think Marvel Unlimited's like $9 a month or whatever. And it's like even though it's called Marvel Unlimited, there is Star Wars stuff. It doesn't have to be just Marvel. If you're into Marvel, then that's two birds with one stone kind of thing. But there's a lot of even back issues of like Dark Horse comic stuff too, like past. They go all
the way back.
Yeah, even back to the original Star Wars run from like 1978 or 9 or whatever, or 77. I'm sorry, with like the really like none of the characters look like their screen counterparts. It's just there's just a huge backlog of like treasury of just good Star Wars stories out there.
Yeah, and speaking of backlog, I'll shout out Aspyre's work. As I said, really accessible ways to get to a lot of different Star Wars games. So put that on your radar and check out the Star Wars, which I hope they expand with stuff that is missing. I'm not sure what is missing, frankly, but I really love the Star Wars vintage section of Disney Plus, getting the Clone Wars micro series, getting even just weird stuff like Ewoks and droids, and the faithful Wookiee. Like it's great that there is
Caravan of Courage.
Yes, and the other one, like Wicked's Day Off or whatever the hell it is. I haven't seen this.
Wicked's Day Off. No. What kind of job does he have? It's the Life Day one, isn't it? I think Life Day.
Yeah, it's something I haven't seen those movies, but
Wicked's Day Off.
There is a lot of great old Star Wars content being preserved, frankly, and I think that's really exciting. So, Andrew, I am much more positive on Disney era Star Wars than most people are.
I am too. Even the not so great stuff. More Star Wars. I will never say no to more Star Wars. So
yeah, and a lot to look forward to. So I think before we wrap out this episode, just a couple things. What are you looking forward to on the horizon the most?
Like I mentioned, the KOTOR remake. I don't know. I'm hoping it's probably not going to happen, but I really want them to explore Old Republic era, like in a show or something of some kind, other than just the MMO and
like, which is still trucking along.
Yeah, just I don't know. I want to see more Old Republic stuff in some. I know they just started their new initiative with High Republic.
Yeah.
But I think there's still some stuff to kind of explore in the old, 2,000-3,000 whatever years before Battle of Yavin. You can do some stuff there too. And I want to check out some of the High Republic stuff too, by the way. So I saw I saw this really dope shot of I think it was a comic panel. I don't know what it was, but it was like all these like lightsaber configurations.
Yeah,
with all these different like colors. There's like one with like two lightsabers next to each other, kind of like those there's like a Japanese sword that kind of has that look where it's like, I forget what they call it, but like it's like basically if you stab, like it makes it really hard to heal from that because you have two stab wounds right next to each other. And anyways, they have like different lightsaber colors and stuff. There's like a teal one, there's an orange one. There's like, I'm like, oh, like these look cool. Like it makes me like I want to know who these people are. I saw there was like, I think like twin Jedis, right? There's like twin.
Yeah, no, like they're like
non-binary, I think, or like non-gender conforming, like Jedis. I'm like, wonder what's going on there.
They've got like a Force dyad too. Like there is so much cool shit in High Republic. People got to check out the High Republic. I really
gonna check into that.
I will say I think they really flooded the zone with too much High Republic content, though. I mean, there is so much to go through, and those books are so. I mean, they're not really long, but they're like hundreds of pages, and there are so many of them.
Yeah, I went to Barnes and Noble's last week, and I was thinking like, oh, there's like maybe like 4 or 5, right? Like 4 or 5 High Republic books, and I'm checking the shelf, and like there was like I think I counted like maybe 8 or 9 of them. Like, oh shoot, okay, there's a little bit more than I expected. Like I know there's a lot on the comics, but I know there's like we have these many novels out. I'm like, oh, like I gotta like catch up to do.
There's actually a cool one which I almost bought the book of, but it's kind of expensive, so I passed on it. But they have basically like a radio play. There's an entire, it's not just an audiobook. They basically made a radio play for the High Republic with a full voice cast, sound effects and everything.
Oh, wow.
And then you can buy like the transcript of it and read along as they perform it for you, which is
cool.
Super fucking cool. Like High Republic, too much stuff at once, but so it's called Tempest Runner. It's primarily like a radio show X experience, like you can buy on Audible and places like that.
Okay.
But then you can buy the book Tempest Runner, which is just a script for it, so you can follow along there if you want to. One of my just like relaxation goals this summer is to read more High Republic stuff, because one of the things I'm most looking forward to into the future is like they're calling it, I think, like wave 2 of High Republic is coming in October. So there's a good period of time now where no new High Republic stuff is coming out to catch up before that new stuff. So imminently, I'm really excited about that. I went from being on the fence about Kenobi to being fucking pumped for it. I think Kenobi looks awesome. I will say,
is it the music, Abram, or was the gotcha? Because for me, it was the music.
The music is very good, but what got me was when it became clear that this is not just Kenobi, like poking around on Tatooine for 6 episodes. We've got all these planets. We've got the Inquisitors. There's a lot going on here. And
he has to visit other places, right?
Yeah. And I like this idea of, it's not what it is, but like punished Obi-Wan. Like we see him use a blaster in the second trailer and everything. Like He's doing anything he can to survive. I like
Snake,
that.
or what do you mean?
Yeah, like Snake, or like fucking bearded Cap in Infinity War coming back.
The eye patch.
But I will say the one place I pump the brakes here is that I am not super crazy about Vader having a big presence in the show.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that got spoiled to us like early on. Like Hayden Christensen was going to come back for that, but now it makes the whole like, I mean, you can still get away with it, but the whole scene, I'm think of A New Hope, was like,
yeah,
there's something. I feel a presence I haven't felt in, and he just trails off and walks away, and it's like, yeah, you could just say it was 5 years ago or something like that, or 10 years ago, whatever. Yeah. But that really meant more when it was like Mustafar in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think people are taking it in bad faith. Like I saw somebody, like, because people are like, "Oh, it's going to break canon," or what we understand as canon and timeline. But then there's somebody on Twitter who's like, who was being annoying and was like doing like, here's the fan dialogue of A New Hope, where Vader's like, "Oh, Obi-Wan, I haven't seen you since the climactic battle on Mustafar in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith," and like. Guys, we get it. We get that is not what Vader said. And technically, yes, they could have seen each other between 3 and 4. But at a certain point, you're robbing the weight of this scene by shoving Vader back into it. But again, we'll see. I was just a little bit put off by how heavily Vader's featured in the second trailer and on the poster where he was literally Obi-Wan's heart. It's like, so we'll see. But I think that's
I also think of the whole like, when I left you, I was a learner. Now I am the master. So I'm like, does that still work then? I'm like, I guess maybe Vader has to get his butt kicked for that to work in this show. Like, okay, we'll see.
We'll see. But I'm quite excited about that. Quite excited about High Republic. Quite excited. They just announced a new animated show, like Tales from the Galaxy, I think it's called, with Dave Filoni working on it. I'll look this up. I believe this came out like ahead of May the 4th. I'm not sure. Okay. Let's see. Tales from the Galaxy.
And that just reminded me too, we still have celebration this month too. So who knows what else we're
getting. Here we go. New animated will be announced at Celebration. And it leaked ahead of time. Okay.
There you go.
But yeah, I'll be looking.
I think that was the case too with Visions too, because they announced a panel for that. And I forgot who the host was. She's like someone in the game sphere. I can't remember her name. Yeah. But the hostess for that like mentioned something about like, oh yeah, they're gonna have like new stuff to show. It's like, new stuff, you say?
That'll go crazy. I really became a huge Visions fan after our episode. So
yes,
that stuff is high on my excitement ranking. But again, also that Respawn game and Jedi Fallen Order 2. I really can't wait. I think Jedi Fallen Order 1 is quite
actually after that cliffhanger too.
Yeah. So we'll see. The point is, I think there's a lot to be excited about. So
we're eating good, Abram.
We're eating good. And we'll be back to cover all of it. I think I forget exactly what date Celebration is, but I think we will definitely do
I want to say it's like the no, it's not the 17th, is it? I think it falls like in the middle of May.
I bet this Collider article here has it. Star Wars. Yeah. Star Wars Celebration's annual convention going from May 26th to 29th.
Oh, okay. So that's the end of the month. So that's right when Kenobi premieres then.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of that. That's
so
weird.
I think what we'll probably do a bit of planning on camera is we'll probably do an episode for Obi-Wan, hopefully like as soon as we possibly can after it premieres, working on both of our schedules. And then I think once Celebration is done, we'll do another bonus episode.
Once the dust is settled.
Yeah, just to talk about all the announcements. But
sounds fun. Star Wars month, all month long.
Yeah. But Andrew, I think that's about all we have today.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention before we go?
I guess just the Force will be with you always.